My name is Luna. I was a 28-year-old who worked in a flower shop located in an office building, creating flower arrangements. My husband, Oliver, was 32 years older than me, and worked as a hairstylist in the same building on the second floor. He was not exactly a celebrity stylist, but he was quite popular. We were celebrating our 3rd year of marriage that year. Apart from the fact that we had been unable to have children, I thought we were doing well as a happy couple. But it seemed I was the only one who thought that way. How did we first meet? Oliver used to frequently buy flowers for his salon from the flower shop on the 1st floor. Initially wary of Oliver, who was skilled in conversation due to his job, I gradually found it natural to have him by my side. How long was it after we started dating? Oliver invited me to dinner at his parents' house, saying he wanted to introduce me to his family. There, Oliver's brother and his fiancée were also present. I had heard about Oliver's struggles being compared to his excellent younger brother, but his brother was unpretentious and amiable, easy to talk to. Handsome, good-natured, and dependable, his brother had it all. Can't blame the parents for comparing, really. His fiancée, too, was beautiful and seemed quite talented. A stunningly attractive couple. Sitting opposite them, I couldn't help but wonder if I would be compared to his brother's bride-to-be if I married Oliver. During the lively conversation over dinner, "Have you guys decided on a date for the wedding ceremony?" Oliver asked his brother. Then, "We're about to decide. We'd love some suggestions for good venues," the brother and his fiancée replied. Oliver's brother, a promising banker, and his fiancée, working at a securities firm, were both solid professionals. Thinking they would prefer something luxurious, considering they'd invite bosses and work colleagues, I suggested some famous venues where my corporate friends had their weddings. The fiancée searched the venues on her mobile phone, happily engrossed in a page showing a venue with a garden chapel. Then Oliver chimed in. "Hey, why don't we do the wedding ceremony together? How about a restaurant wedding?" And so he had proposed with a casual tone. It was something I had hoped would happen eventually, but I was shocked by his sudden suggestion, especially since he hadn't yet formally met my parents. Then, from somewhere, I heard a distinct sking noise. I couldn't believe it, but it seemed like the sound came from my BIL's fiancée. She was making an incredibly dissatisfied face and muttering under her breath. BIL's girlfriend might be okay with such a ceremony, but I. Then Lucas, Oliver's brother, exclaimed, "Bro, that's a great idea! These kinds of stylish ceremonies are becoming more popular." He seemed genuinely excited about Oliver's suggestion. Being more displeased, the fiancée glared at me more, as if to stop Oliver from saying whatever he wanted. But she was glaring at the wrong person. If she had a problem, I wished she would speak up to the enthusiastic brothers instead. Subsequently, driven by the brothers' excitement, we ended up planning a restaurant wedding, and everything progressed quickly. In a flurry, we managed to greet my parents, and the 4 of us dined out to choose a venue. As days passed, the once disgruntled fiancée warmed up to Oliver, who was now BIL, and they got along so well that one would think they were the couple getting married. However, her attitude towards me remained unchanged. And so, 6 months later, the 2 couples held their restaurant weddings. After the marriage, I switched from full-time to part-time at work, focusing more on household chores. I left for work after sending Oliver off, returned home earlier to prepare dinner, and waited for Oliver's return. This became my routine. Sometimes, my BIL and his wife, both working full-time, relied on our dinner unexpectedly. It seemed cooking was too much of a hassle for them. Camila, my CL, came with just a token gift, evidently expecting me to cook, sparing herself the effort. At the dinner table, Camila oddly sat next to Oliver instead of her husband, treating me more like a convenient housekeeper. Honestly, their visits were far from welcome. Moreover, she indirectly criticized me, saying I looked plain or that my only talent was messing with flowers. I couldn't stand being demeaned in front of Oliver, but I hated confrontations, so I pretended not to mind Camila's words. Instead, after they left, "Why does she look down on people so much?" It's terrible to imply someone's worthless if they don't work at an office. I vented to Oliver. She's a competent and successful woman. Maybe you're just hearing it that way, Luna. It sounds like you're envious. You shouldn't say things like that. But his response was always defensive of Camila. Oliver, proud of his brother's achievements, seemed unwilling to hear anything negative about his brother's wife. It felt like he was implying I was the problem, listing all of Camila's virtues instead. Recently, my daily life had changed a bit due to Lucas's sudden solo assignment. Camila, too, seemed somewhat reluctant to come uninvited to our dinners alone. With fewer visits from her, I was free from her snide comments and had been able to spend my days more peacefully. But now, a different worry had surfaced. For some reason, Oliver had been coming home late at night, day after day, leaving me to have dinner and go to bed alone. It was really worrying that he had been returning home after midnight so frequently. I hoped he didn't fall ill. One morning, as Oliver hurriedly got ready for work. "You've been coming home late recently. Are you okay? I'm worried you might wear yourself out." I asked him. Oliver didn't even look at me. No need to worry. It's just a contest. I'm busy preparing for a hair contest." He stammered. I haven't heard anything about a hair contest. Usually, he'd make a big deal about entering a hair contest weeks in advance, but this time, nothing. Isn't that strange? Sensing his haste, I asked, "When is this contest? You didn't mention it before. Did you decide to enter suddenly?" Without turning face to me, he replied, "Yeah, that's right. I overlooked the invitation. I've been busy arranging for a cut model and stuff." He didn't even look at me. Come to think of it, when a contest was near, a really cute cut model used to come to the salon after hours. Is she coming this time too? Is it the same cut model you usually have? I asked nonchalantly. Oliver exaggeratedly replied, "Yeah, that's right. I've been keeping her late. Really, I feel so bad about it." His manner of speaking seemed exaggerated. What is this? This feels so forced. Doesn't his speech sound unnatural? Despite my feelings. Is that really okay? It's dangerous to keep a girl late every day, even if you're short on time. When I looked at Oliver, he seemed determined to avoid eye contact. Glancing at his watch, he said, Look at the time. I'm going to be late." Ignoring my words, he hurried out the door. Did he just run away? That reaction was so unnatural. Am I overthinking this? Could it be something with the cut model, an affair? No, that can't be it. The more I thought about it, the worse my thoughts got. After all, such things are unthinkable, aren't they? It's just my bad habit of overthinking. I need to stop that. It's just the late nights because of the hair contest preparations, that's all. Carrying these troubled thoughts, I got ready and headed to work. When I arrived at the shop, Mason, the manager of the salon where Oliver worked, was there picking out flowers for the salon. It was usually Oliver who picked the flowers, so it was unusual to see Mason here. Mason said he leaves the flower selection to Oliver because he doesn't know much about them. Could it be that Oliver asked Mason to pick the flowers to avoid further questions about this morning's conversation? I decided to probe a little. "Oliver is participating in a hair contest with you, right? Good luck with that," I said to Mason. But Mason looked confused. "Which hair contest? We don't have any such plans," he asked. I also asked about the cut model, but he said they hadn't requested any recently. Apparently, the model was Mason's cousin, who was currently studying abroad. As for the late nights, Mason said that Oliver had been leaving the salon at the regular closing time, so there was no way he had to come home after midnight. It seemed like everything Oliver told me was a lie. So, what had Oliver been doing every night, and with whom? While my suspicion about the cut model was cleared, I still felt uneasy. Stunned and trying to grasp the situation. Should I subtly ask him about it? Mason offered. I thought about accepting Mason's offer, But would Oliver give him a straight answer? I felt like Oliver, being so good at talking, would give vague responses. It seemed more likely that something was going on. I didn't want to give Oliver any chance to concoct an excuse. I had to keep it a secret that I was aware of his lies and probing into the matter. I told Mason that I would handle it myself for now, and asked him to keep our conversation secret, saying I would seek his advice if needed. That night, I decided to wait for Oliver and ask him as if I was oblivious to everything. I doubted he would tell me the truth anyway. Around midnight, Oliver finally came home. While claiming to have been working late, he looked slightly startled when he saw me waiting up. "I'm home. I'm exhausted. Finally got the new haircut done," he said, unaware that I knew everything. I wondered what kind of amazing haircut he completed. I asked Oliver, who was trying to mask his nervousness. "You must be worn out. Hey, do you mind if I ask something?" As I spoke quietly. "What's up? What do you want to know?" His voice trembled. "Are you really working? Are you really preparing for a hair contest?" Oliver replied. "Well, of course I am. What else would it be?" His unease was apparent. He seemed intent on sticking to his lies. "In that case." "Oh? What about cheating? Yes or no?" I asked directly, and his face changed completely. "What? Of course I'm not." Oliver began to get defensive. Even the usually eloquent Oliver had no room for jokes. Despite his panic, he tried to weave an escape with desperate excuses. "You know, Mason told me. The hair contest is a lie, right? Wouldn't it be better to just come clean? What are you really doing?" I cornered him with no escape. Apparently, he had no excuses left and, trembling with clenched fists, "Fine. I'll say it. It's an affair. I've fallen in love with someone else," he blurted out. His confession came off as resigned and frustrated. He even started to get angry, as if it was some sort of injustice. I tried to get him to confess who the other person was, but he refused to say, probably because it was someone he shouldn't be involved with. No matter how much I pressed, my anger only grew. "Then I'll hire a detective or whatever it takes to find out. Just be ready. It's Camila." Hearing my words, he went pale and confessed in a defeated tone. "Camila? Isn't she Lucas's wife?" I was shocked, and he retorted, "Yes, Camila. She's pregnant with my child." "You haven't had a child with me, but you did with someone else, and that someone is your brother's wife? That's despicable." As I hurled accusations at Oliver, he retorted with unreasonable words. "It's your fault for being infertile. Anyway, I'm going to take responsibility and divorce you." His words were infuriatingly unfair. That explained why he always sided with his Sael over me. "Are you kidding? Do you even realize what you're saying? Does Lucas know?" To have been treated this way by him, I couldn't help but be angry. "It doesn't matter. Camila and I won't be separated. She's going to divorce Lucas and be with me. No one can stop us," Oliver declared defiantly. "If you don't like it, then let's get a divorce right now." Disgusted by his words, I retorted. "Don't like it? That's an understatement. I'll gladly divorce you." I decided then and there to cut ties with this hopeless man. The next day, I told everything to my parents, my in-laws, and Lucas, who was at his assignment location. Shocked and furious, they couldn't believe Oliver and Camila had an affair and were expecting a child. Despite their family's reactions, both were unapologetic and brazen. "All this is Asael's fault, right? If she's upset about the affair or didn't notice it, it's her own fault. If Lucas wants to blame someone, he should blame Asael." Camila even had the audacity to put the blame on me. Their lack of remorse disgusted everyone. Lucas decided to divorce Camila, and both Oliver and Camila were disowned by our parents and Lucas. Later, when I reported the situation to Mason, the concerned salon manager, he was one of our recommended hairstylists. This could affect our salon's reputation. I need to think about what to do with Oliver, he said while crossing his arms. 3 months later, after Camila's remarriage prohibition period ended, she and Oliver got married. Yet, for some reason, I was getting calls from Oliver on my mobile phone. I was at work, and as far as I was concerned, he was a person from my past. I had nothing to say to him, yet he kept calling persistently if I ignored him. Oliver, still somehow keeping his job under Mason's management and working in the beauty salon on the 2nd floor, was someone I don't want showing up at the flower shop. Reluctantly, I answered the call. "Hey, can you help me out here?" His voice was weak and pitiful, a far cry from his earlier bravado. "Why should I? I have no obligation to help you. Can you stop bothering me during work?" As I was about to hang up, "Don't be so cold. Can I come over to talk?" Oliver appeared to really want to talk. Not wanting him to actually come, I decided to listen. It turned out he was in quite a laughable predicament. According to Oliver, on the day they registered their marriage, Camila received a demand for alimony in a divorce lawsuit via a formal notice. "What's this about?" he questioned, and it turned out Camila had been having an affair with her boss, and his wife found out, demanding $50,000 in alimony. Moreover, she was pregnant, and it was unclear whether the child was Oliver's or her boss's. He might end up raising a child that isn't his. "I have no confidence in raising a child that might not be mine. Tell me how to get a divorce." His SOS to me was the last thing I needed. "Just say what you told me," was all the advice I gave. That's it. That was the last call I ever received from Oliver. Nevertheless, both my former sister-in-law and ex-husband were such despicable people. They were both broke after paying us alimony in the divorce suits. Oliver was likely to be fired by Mason now, and with Camila's affair scandal at work, she would probably be fired too, burdened with a hefty debt of $50,000 for alimony. What would they do now? Face bankruptcy? It seemed like a miserable life awaits them, socially and personally obliterated. As for me, I remarried a man who supplies flowers to my shop and am expecting a long-awaited child. I live happily, surrounded by beautiful flowers, a kind and honest husband, and looking forward to holding my lovely child. Despite being called plain, living true to myself is best. I've learned my lesson to stay away from smooth talkers and those who look down on others. Factory worker father? Breaking off the engagement. As soon as she said that, Edith, my mother-in-law, threw her coffee at my dad. Beside her, laughing, my father-in-law, John, made no move to stop Edith. Coffee stains quickly spread across the suit Dad had specially cleaned for this day. Fortunately, the coffee was lukewarm and there was no risk of a burn. I offered Dad a handkerchief in surprise, while Timothy frantically tried to clean his suit. While worrying about any injuries, Timothy scolded his parents, who just kept laughing. During this, Dad said nothing, simply stood up, pointed at them, and declared, "Then I'll just have to ruin your company." He said this in a voice I had never heard before, took my hand, and we left the house. Behind us, Timothy's shouts at his parents echoed, and soon he followed us. "I'm terribly sorry. I'll make sure my parents apologize later." "No need. It's over. We're cutting ties," he said somberly, patting Timothy on the shoulder. "My name is Penelope, a 26-year-old office worker. My family has a bit of a unique situation. I grew up without a mom. She passed away when I was young, and Dad raised me single-handedly. Despite being busy as a factory manager, he never missed a school event. He'd often rush back to work after these events, but I've always respected him deeply for it. During college, I dated Timothy, who was 2 years my senior. He was gentle, sincere, and popular at university. Despite knowing it was a long shot, I confessed to him, and he accepted. However, Timothy had his worries, mainly about his parents. He spoke of them only in vague terms, never delving into details. It seemed there was some conflict with them, but I didn't press, though it troubled me. Still, Timothy himself was flawless, so our relationship continued. He lived alone since starting university, but occasionally visited his parents. He'd return exhausted, clearly stressed about them. He always put me first, making him my pride and joy. I had always wanted to introduce him to Dad, the man I respected and my beloved boyfriend. I wondered how they would react to each other. One day, while on a date, we unexpectedly bumped into Dad. "Oh, Dad. Aren't you supposed to be at work? What are you doing here?" "Ah, Penelope. Just returning from a client." "And who's this?" "Oh, this is Timothy. We're dating." Dad, not usually stern but with a somewhat fierce look, can be misunderstood. Timothy was very nervous meeting Dad for the first time. "Nice to meet you, I'm Timothy. I am fortunate to be dating Penelope." Timothy greeted Dad quickly in a tense manner. Dad warmly accepted him, chatting and laughing with him. "So, you're Penelope's boyfriend. Don't be so nervous. Take good care of her." "Yes, I will. Thank you." As they continued talking, Timothy's nervousness faded, and they got along well. I was relieved to see the two most important men in my life getting along. I had worried about Dad's reaction, but he had to return to work. So we parted ways. After Dad left, I turned to Timothy, who seemed to be in a daze. When I asked what was wrong, he suddenly became excited. "That was really your dad, right?" I was puzzled by his unexpected words, but since it was the truth, I answered without hesitation. "Yes, that was my dad." "Is there something wrong with that?" "Right, that makes sense, that was him, huh?" He crossed his arms and seemed lost in thought for a while. Curious, I decided to ask him what was on his mind. "What are you thinking about so hard? Did you not like him?" "No way, that's not it. I do like him, but, well..." His hesitant reply was all I got, and any further questions were evaded. I became anxious as he wouldn't tell me the reason. I wondered if, despite his words, he actually found it hard to get along with my dad. And so, I began to worry unnecessarily. A few days later, Timothy called me out, saying he had something important to talk about. Maybe because of the recent meeting with my dad, I felt unusually nervous as I went to our meeting spot. When I arrived at the cafe, he was already there. Through the glass, I could see him looking downcast. This deepened my anxiety, but I decided to act cheerfully anyway. As I entered the cafe and approached him slowly, I said, "Timothy, sorry, did you wait long?" I crept up behind him and spoke, tapping his shoulder, which startled him. "Penelope, you scared me." Startled, he caught his breath as he saw me. And I was surprised to see how much I had startled him. He had been that deep in thought. Sitting opposite the still gloomy him, I placed our order. His continued gloom only increased my anxiety. Desperate to hear what was on his mind, I spoke to him. "Hey, Timothy. What's bothering you so much? Didn't you like my dad?" When I asked, Timothy looked up and immediately denied it. "No, not at all. I actually respect your dad. That's why my... He stopped mid-sentence and looked down again, causing me to sigh. Realizing I had no choice but to press for an answer, I asked directly. "If you have a problem, I want to know. What's troubling you?" He took a deep breath as if making up his mind, then began to share. "I have something to tell you about my parents. It's a long story, but I need you to hear it all." The story he shared was shocking. According to him, his parents lacked grace and only judged people by their education and jobs. He had suffered a lot because of them, as they habitually interfered with his life. Whenever he introduced a girlfriend, they would criticize her and drive her away. The women would leave, often in tears, breaking up with him. That's why he wanted to marry me, but was troubled about bringing up his parents. But that's not a problem. We just don't have to involve them after getting married, and endure only during the marriage proposal. Dad seemed to like Timothy, so what was the issue? I don't mind about that, it's okay. Dad liked you too, so don't worry. Really? That makes me happy. When I first met your dad, I was shocked to see how different he was from my own parents. I thought, if I marry Penelope, I'll become the son of such a great dad, even if it's just by marriage. But getting married means your parents become mine too, and I couldn't make up my mind. He brightened up when I mentioned Dad liked him, but then he sighed deeply again. However, an idea seemed to strike him, and he looked up, apologizing. When we go to my parents to announce our marriage, can your dad come with us? I want them to know such an admirable person exists. It might not change them immediately, but I hope it will make them rethink. Okay. I'll talk to Dad. But I wish you had told me this more straightforwardly. Oh, sorry. I'll properly do it now. Realizing his oversight, he hastily made a proper marriage proposal. Having accepted his proposal, I decided to discuss it with Dad. Initially reluctant, Dad agreed to join us for the marriage proposal visit after Timothy asked. We then coordinated with Timothy to schedule a visit to his parents. On the day of the visit, we stood in front of Timothy's parents' house, all of us neatly dressed. It was my first time meeting Timothy's parents, and knowing their reputation made me nervous. Seeing us tense, Dad chuckled and reassured us. Don't be so stiff. Timothy's parents are just overly concerned. Be confident. Feeling reassured by Dad's pat on our shoulders, my tension eased slightly. As the appointed time arrived, Timothy rang the doorbell. But there was no sound inside, making us wonder if they were not home. In a bit of a panic, Timothy rang the bell again, but still no response. Feeling awkward in front of Dad, Timothy excused himself and went inside first. Dad and I exchanged glances, waiting silently for Timothy to return. After a short while, Timothy reappeared at the entrance, looking flustered. Before I could ask what happened, he started making excuses with a forced smile. Sorry, I was just delayed. Please wait a bit longer, I'll be ready soon. He quickly went back inside. Dad sighed in disbelief at this behavior, and I felt increasingly anxious. I feared this incident might derail the marriage talks. Though Dad is not quick-tempered, he dislikes dishonesty. So, I couldn't help but consider the worst-case scenario. As these thoughts crossed my mind, Timothy finally came back to the entrance. Apologizing, he invited us inside. Inside, Timothy's parents were already sitting on the sofa, but their demeanor was strange. Editham, his mother, greeted us with a sarcastic smile and arrogant attitude, while John, his father, seemed disinterested and looked away. Though we were led to the sitting room, the coffee served was lukewarm. Silent since our arrival, Timothy's behavior, and the tense atmosphere made me uneasy. However, knowing we needed to greet them, I tried to compose myself. As Timothy introduced his parents and us, I felt warmth in my heart from his considerate introduction of Dad and me. But his parents scoffed at our introduction, and the next moment, Edith's hand reached for her cup, shocking me. Factory worker father? Breaking off the engagement. As soon as she said that, Edith threw her coffee at Dad. Beside her, laughing, John made no move to stop Edith. Coffee stains quickly spread across the suit he had specially cleaned for this day. Fortunately, the coffee was lukewarm, and there was no risk of a burn. I offered Dad a handkerchief in surprise, while Timothy frantically tried to clean Dad's suit. While worrying about injuries, Timothy scolded his parents, who just kept laughing. During this, Dad said nothing, simply stood up, pointed at them, and declared, "Then I'll just have to ruin your company." He said this in a voice I had never heard before, took my hand, and we left the house. Behind us, Timothy's shouts at his parents echoed, and soon he followed us. "I'm terribly sorry. I'll make sure my parents apologize later." "No need. It's over. We're cutting ties," Dad said somberly, patting Timothy on the shoulder. Then we went back to our house with Timothy, and Dad immediately changed his clothes. Meanwhile, Timothy earnestly apologized outside Dad's room, with Dad's troubled voice occasionally heard. But I was too shocked by Edith's actions to pay much attention to anything else. From the moment I saw their faces, I knew getting along would be difficult due to their arrogant attitude. But I never expected them to do something like that, and I was furious that they belittled Dad. Sitting on the living room sofa and clenching my fists, I kept replaying the earlier events. I knew getting worked up wouldn't help, but I couldn't help myself. Eventually, Dad came into the living room after changing, followed by Timothy, who immediately apologized to me. "Penelope, I'm truly sorry. I had no idea they would do something like that, let alone belittle someone. I'm really sorry, I did a terrible thing." Timothy probably knew it wasn't something easily forgiven. The fact he didn't ask for forgiveness showed his sincerity. This made me feel like I should apologize to him. I took Timothy's hand, who was on his knees, and apologized. "I'm sorry too for saying something so thoughtless without knowing anything. I never expected it to turn out like this." Then I turned to Dad to offer my deepest apology. "Dad, I'm sorry too. My careless suggestion led to this mess." Dad just looked down and shrugged his shoulders in response to my apology. It's no wonder he didn't say anything. This situation was unexpected for everyone here. But this meant his earlier words might actually come true. I decided to ask him directly about his intentions. "Dad, what you said to them earlier, was that true? Are you really planning to ruin their company?" In response to my question, Dad looked at Timothy and then nodded firmly. "Yes, it's true. I do intend to do it. His company's performance has been poor, and I've been thinking about what to do with it. It's a good opportunity to cut it off." Dad's eyes were serious and unwavering. He is the owner of a factory, a well-known leading local company where he started as a worker. He first worked as a worker at this factory. He gave up his dream of becoming a painter after Mom passed away to raise me alone. Working tirelessly in the factory, his hard work was recognized, and he climbed the ranks. Eventually, he was favored by the previous president and promoted repeatedly. When the previous president, or rather, the former factory manager, wanted to retire, Dad was chosen to take over. The factory owns several subsidiaries, and one of them is managed by John, Timothy's father. This was revealed during the earlier greeting. John should have recognized this, but he failed to, as Edith acted first, before Timothy introduced him in detail. Timothy just wanted to say that Dad worked in the factory, which is the parent company of John's. But Edith and John's prejudice led to this unfortunate situation. If they had listened properly, this might not have happened. Dad said John's company seemed to be mismanaged. This could potentially affect Dad's factory, so he had been considering what action to take. "I was thinking of layoffs to improve management, but I'd rather avoid that if possible. It seemed like the right time to make a cut." He smiled troubledly, probably not wanting to lay off employees. Regret tinged his words. After saying this, he turned to Timothy and said in a low voice, "I've decided to do it, but it means your parents will be in trouble. It's harsh, but are you sure you're okay with this?" Faced with this question, Timothy hesitated for a moment but then looked Dad in the eye and replied, "I've already cut ties with them. They did unforgivable things. They need to atone for it, and I want them to reflect on this incident and everything else. More than that, I have a request. It's inappropriate at this time, but I must ask, please let me get engaged to Penelope. I'm aware of the trouble my parents caused. More than anything, I want to be with Penelope. Please allow it." Dad crossed his arms, deep in thought. It may seem inconsiderate right after such an incident. However, moved by Timothy's fervor, I also pleaded with Dad. "I also ask you, Dad. Despite everything, I want to be with Timothy." After hearing our pleas, Dad hummed for a bit before shaking his head as if resigned. "If both of you feel the same, then it's fine. But there's a condition. Your parents are business owners, after all. I want to know what will happen to their employees. If you can't answer that, your marriage is off. Dad said this and sent Timothy out, not even glancing at me before returning to his room. A few days later, Timothy came with a plan regarding John's company's employees. He had promised Dad beforehand and was discussing it when I returned from work. Apparently, Timothy had listed potential new jobs for all the employees and was showing it to Dad. So, I would like to ask, albeit presumptuously, for these employees to transfer to your company. I hope to support their employment there, contributing to the business's growth. Timothy was earnestly requesting Dad to hire them. And I know it's selfish, but I would like to join the company too. I'll work without salary until their work stabilizes and shows results. I want to compensate for the shortcomings with my work and salary. Once that's done, I'd like to marry Penelope. Timothy seemed to blame himself for the company's downfall. He wanted to work hard as a lubricant in the situation. I was just learning now that our marriage would be delayed, but it seemed unavoidable. Welcome back, Penelope. You heard, right? I'm sorry for deciding something so important on my own. But I couldn't be happy just myself. That's too much, Timothy. Dad, let me join the company too. I'll work alongside Timothy, so please accept his proposal. As I said this, Timothy tried to stop me. But I refused to back down and desperately begged Dad. While we were doing this, Dad remained silent. But after our repeated pleas, he finally unfolded his arms and quietly nodded. Meanwhile, Timothy's parents hadn't apologized yet. Dad had been waiting these past days, but that was coming to an end. Time's up. He muttered, beginning preparations to take over John's company. Time passed, and John's company finally collapsed. Then, Timothy received a furious call from his parents, and the three of us were summoned to their house. When we arrived at their home, it was crowded with people. They were all protesting the company's collapse, shouting angrily. John probably hadn't explained anything to the employees. By calling us there, it seemed they intended to shift their own blunders onto us. As soon as they spotted us, they began pointing and accusing. Look there! They're the cause of everything, not me. They destroyed the company, not me. It's true. Especially that woman, she seduced our son and ingratiated herself with his father. We're the victims here. So stop making such a fuss. As Timothy's parents ranted, trying to deflect from themselves. Although he got angry with his parents saying whatever they want, he was trying to soothe the protesting crowd. Please wait, everyone! Yes, my father's company collapsed, but it's because of those two. And I've arranged job placements for all of you. Please hear me out. The crowd gradually quieted down, and they began listening to us. Timothy read out each person's name, informing them of their next job. The former employees, who realized that they won't get laid off, seemed relieved. After announcing everyone's new positions, Timothy's parents started causing a scene. Hey, Timothy. What about us? Why ignore us? Tell us our job placements. If you do, we'll forgive that man and even approve your marriage to that woman. Ignoring their wailing, Timothy began explaining the circumstances of the company's downfall. The former employees, who realized that they won't be laid off, seemed relieved. Which is why I'm truly sorry for the trouble. Thanks to our generous president, your jobs are saved. Please, let's start anew without anger. Turning to Dad, Timothy gave an expression of gratitude. We've caused so much trouble. Thank you for indulging our selfishness. I promise to work diligently. The former employees, moved by Timothy's actions, also appreciate to Dad. Amidst this, his parents were the only ones dissenting. Don't be fooled. That man destroyed the company, and she instigated it. Face reality. You've lost your jobs because of them, right? Just because they've helped you now doesn't mean you should lose sight of the truth. Despite their desperate appeals, no one paid any attention to Timothy's parents. Especially after hearing the whole story from Timothy earlier. Even Dad ignored their words. As the former employees looked on, hoping for reassurance, Dad told them that he would inform them of the details later, which brought voices of relief. The employees left the house. Once everyone was gone and it became quiet, Timothy's parents started complaining about how they couldn't live anymore. The company's collapse means we'll lose this house, which was the collateral. Yes, exactly. Where are we supposed to live now? Timothy sighed in exasperation at his parents, who were determined to blame us. It's obviously your own fault. Maybe it's time you learned a bit of self-reflection. He rebuked them, but it seemed they had no intention of listening. Unable to bear it anymore, I finally burst out in anger. After all the trouble you've caused Timothy, getting carried away because you were business owners. Isn't this all because you only cared about titles? My words prompted them to retort. But Dad intervened, not letting them speak. A business owner is responsible. Taking responsibility is part of the job. Do your last duty properly. Receiving a stern scolding from each of us, they were left speechless. Leaving the two of them behind, we departed from there. Eventually, they lost everything, the company, the house, and the land. They didn't offer any compensation to the former employees and seemed to have dodged the issue. However, having lost everything, they ended up arrested for dine and dash. They contacted Timothy for help, but he coldly refused, having cut ties with them. They're probably in jail now. Since then, we've received no contact from them. Even if they got out, they still had to atone for their actions towards the former employees. Timothy and I quit our jobs and joined Dad's company. For the first few months, we lived off our savings and worked without a salary, as promised. One day, we met some of the employees from Timothy's parents' company. Recognizing us, they rushed over, eagerly shaking our hands, expressing gratitude for the new job. And thanking Dad for taking them in. They thanked Timothy for arranging it and thanked me for my help. I didn't remember, but I had helped them with some documents when they first joined. Grateful for everything, they left, saying they'd continue to work hard. Hearing this, we felt relieved and hurried to Dad's office. He warmly welcomed us in his office and handed us thick envelopes. What is this? It's your unpaid salaries. It didn't all fit in one envelope, so there are several. Dad chuckled, leaving us astonished. We hadn't been here long enough to compensate for employing many new workers. Yet, we were being given our salaries. Bewildered, we just stood there. But Dad continued, thanking us. Thanks to you, they work with enthusiasm. They always express their gratitude and worry about you. I couldn't shame myself by not paying such excellent employees. And our performance has definitely improved. Thank you. Hearing this, we embraced and cried together. We had been so focused on ourselves that we're unable to see anything else around us. But more than that, we were moved by their concern for us. Then Dad said something even more heartwarming. Timothy, I'm impressed with your leadership. If my daughter agrees, will you marry her? Yes. Yes, of course. I promise I'll make her happy. With a tear-streaked face, Timothy promised me and Dad. I hugged him and cried together. So, we got married. We continue to work together at Dad's company, living happily. Gradually, work has become more efficient, allowing us to have a broader view of the company, even discussing productivity with Dad. Timothy visits the factory and subsidiaries, asking about inconveniences and proposing solutions, staying very busy. We both work with more passion than at our previous jobs. Finding fulfillment really does change one's work ethic. But soon, that will have to be put on hold. I'm taking maternity leave from Dad's company. Dad, Timothy, everyone at the company, and I are all looking forward to the arrival of our grandchild. Life without kids is just miserable. My daughter Laura is both adorable and a genius. William said that with a smirk, and I couldn't help but feel a surge of uncontrollable anger. It was like he'd forgotten all he's done to me, and then he just came up to talk to me with that nonsense. I couldn't help but be furious. However, I remembered the situation I was in and managed to suppress my anger. Trying to appear as cheerful as possible, I decided to reply to him. Even if he gets mad at it, it's nothing compared to what I've endured. I called my daughter, who was a little distance away, and proudly said, "Okay, let me also introduce my daughter, Jasmine." I'm probably wearing the kind of smile I imagine. While showing that to him, I hugged Jasmine, who ran up to me. "What?" He looked at us, his mouth agape in surprise. He probably couldn't accept the reality he had always looked down upon. His mistress Kate, who was grinning just like him until a moment ago, also seemed unable to hide her shock. While looking at them, I started talking to Jasmine. "My name is Isabel, and I'm a 51-year-old office worker. I have a daughter, and people are often surprised when I tell them she's 12. I did marry late, but there were reasons for that. I have a history of divorce, and I didn't have children at that time. I met my ex-husband William in an arrangement that was almost like an arranged marriage. A friend of mine worried about me always working and not getting married, and threw a party for me. That's where William took a liking to me, and I received his advances. Even so, I wasn't interested at first and was reluctant to respond to his actions. Yet, as he approached me persistently, I gradually started to return his feelings. Eventually, we started dating and soon got married. After marriage, William was serious about having children. Being in my late 30s, I felt a lot of pressure. I don't know if it was because of that, but we couldn't have a baby for a long time. Gradually, William's attitude turned cold, and he started to look down on me. "What, infertile? Were you here? Did you pick up the dry cleaning I asked for?" He called me infertile, treating me almost like a slave. It was so frustrating, I struggled to find a solution. I went to the hospital imagining the worst, but there was nothing wrong with me. I was even told that stress might be the cause, which left me feeling hopeless. I tried changing my diet, taking supplements. I tried everything, but still couldn't get pregnant. I suggested William get tested, thinking maybe the problem wasn't with me. "Listen, William. I went to the hospital, and they found nothing wrong. So, maybe it's worth considering that the issue might be with you, and you should get tested." As soon as I said that, his face turned red with anger. "What? You're saying I'm the problem? It's just that you can't get pregnant, don't suspect me." "But there's nothing wrong with me, and I've been under treatment for a long time. If we still can't have a baby, it might be because of you." "No way. I'm always fine. The problem is definitely with you, okay?" He completely rejected my suggestion, blaming me. At first, I fought back, but it's hard when someone keeps saying you're the one at fault. Gradually, I became exhausted, and one day, his words made it clear that I couldn't do it anymore. "What's the point of being a woman if you can't even have a baby?" He said it so disdainfully, and I couldn't respond. It wasn't that I agreed with his words. Instead, I was shocked at why I had to be spoken to like that. I worked while managing household chores, and I thought I had devoted myself to him, who was also working. Nevertheless, just because I couldn't have a baby, I never expected to be so thoroughly negated. With no emotional support and losing my motivation, I couldn't bring myself to ask him to get tested again. The thought of hearing the same words again frightened me so much that I couldn't speak up. Sensing that, he started commanding me to do various things. "Man, I'm tired. I want a different drink, not the usual beer today. Hey, you can't get pregnant, so you must be free, right? Come home right now." Laughing smugly, he treated me like a slave. If I showed any sign of arguing back, he'd hurl even more abuse at me. Still, I endured and just kept going day by day. You'd think I'd better divorce him if I'm putting up with all that. However, I married late and thought I wouldn't be able to marry again if I let that go. Also, I was embarrassed about divorcing and couldn't take that step. Time passed without me being able to do anything, and I turned 38. That's when things took a sudden turn. Even then, I was enduring harassment almost every day about infertility while continuing to work. "Hey, you should know what I don't like by now. I can't eat such terrible food. This is why infertile women. That day, after he snapped at me like that, I couldn't hold back anymore and argued back. What does the meal have to do with not having a baby? I can't stand it anymore. Enough is enough. When I said so, William jumped up and started yelling at me. What's with that attitude? You can't even fulfill your role as a woman, and now you complain to me when I come back from work. Suddenly bombarded with nonsensical complaints, I got furious. What do you mean by a woman's role? If it's about having a baby, you have a responsibility too. I got tested and there was nothing wrong. But you refused to get tested, trying to escape your responsibility. And yet, you only complain about me, which I think is unfair. He seemed a bit taken aback by my rare rebuttal, but his silence was brief, and he soon started hurling abuses again. Why are you so stubborn? In times like these, she would immediately reflect and apologize. Hearing his words, it was my turn to be stunned. Before I could ask who he was talking about, he made a sheepish look and quickly looked away. Then, he left the house without a word. He didn't come home that day, and my distrust in him grew. From his words, it was clear there was another woman. That meant he was cheating, and if I pursued it, I might be able to divorce him. It wouldn't be because I couldn't have children, but because of William's affair. Thinking that, I soon took action. I searched online for a nearby private detective agency and hired them. William was apparently cheating recently. I had them investigate his mistress and his behavior. A few weeks after my request, the results came from the agency. During that time, William would come home but wouldn't meet my eyes. He seemed to be avoiding me, and the constant verbal abuse had stopped. Surprised at how comfortably I was living, I regretted not taking action sooner. I should have done this earlier. While thinking that, I looked at the report. It contained the fact that William was having an affair with evidence. It also included a report on his mistress. Her name was Kate. She was 23 years old, naturally younger than both of us. It seemed they started dating soon after I first suggested William get tested. So, he had been cheating for a few years. Angered by the fact, I decided to divorce him and started preparations. While I was preparing, he stayed quiet. That allowed me to steadily proceed, and I finally confronted him about the divorce. William, there's something I need to talk about. It's not about the test, it's more important. When I said that, he looked annoyed as he was just back from work. What now at this time? I've got something to tell you, too. Make it quick. Saying so wearily, he still seemed to be listening while operating his mobile phone. Before he changed his mind, I quickly presented him with the report from the private detective agency. You're having an affair. I've had it properly investigated, so there's no escaping it. With both the baby issue and your affair, I can't take it anymore. I want a divorce. Saying that, I also presented a half-filled divorce application as a sign of my resolve. Far from being flustered, he smirked and took the divorce papers from my hand. Ha, you're well prepared. Such perfect timing makes me doubt your predictive abilities. As he said that and operated his mobile phone, the sound of the front door opening echoed. Good evening. Nice to meet you. I'm Kate, the one who's going to marry William next. Entering from the entrance was the person in the photo enclosed in the report. Younger and cuter than she appeared in the photo, Kate greeted me with a grin. I was just about to introduce you today. I never imagined you'd prepare the divorce papers. If you were always this considerate, I might have stayed, but it's too late now. While half laughing, he entered the living room with the divorce papers in hand. Stunned by the sudden turn of events, I stood frozen, unable to grasp the situation. After a while, William came out of the living room, having signed the divorce papers. Handing them to me with a smirk, he said, "It saved me a lot of trouble. We're no longer a couple, so leave immediately. Kate's pregnant, and I want her to spend her time as stress-free as possible." With Kate and William smirking maliciously, I lost myself. I snatched the divorce papers from his hand and rushed into my room. Then, I grabbed my already packed bags and left the house without a word. 13 years later since then, I was visiting a project I had been involved in that had just been completed. I work as a specialist consultant, and this time I was in charge of designing a condominium that was disaster-resistant and supportive of childcare. At that time, after being introduced to Kate by William, I took refuge in a nearby Holiday Inn. I waited for dawn, then submitted the divorce papers to City Hall and moved from hotel to motel. Eventually, I moved into a house and devoted myself to my work. My mood lightened after divorcing William, and work went smoothly, with increased business opportunities and networking. Thanks to that, I was appointed as a project leader, which led to this urban development project. Now that the long-term project was finally complete, I felt relieved. There was a small event, and the place was crowded. Suddenly, I heard a familiar, unpleasant voice. "Hey, long time no see. Still all alone? I'm here to buy a condo for a family of 3. Not that it matters to you." I regretfully turned towards the voice and regretted it. There stood William and Kate. Between them, there was their daughter, who must have been in Kate's womb at that time. A life without kids is just miserable. My daughter is both adorable and a genius. Seeing William's smirking face, uncontrollable anger surged within me. It was like he forgot all he'd done, casually speaking to me like that. I couldn't help but be furious. As remembering my situation, I managed to suppress my anger. Trying to appear as cheerful as possible, I decided to reply to him. Even if he gets angry, it's nothing compared to what I've endured. I called my daughter, who was a little distance away, and said proudly, "Okay, let me also introduce my daughter." I was probably wearing the kind of smile I had imagined. While showing that to him, I hugged Jasmine, who ran up to me. "Huh?" He looked at us, with his mouth agape in surprise. He probably couldn't accept the reality he had always looked down upon. Grinning just like him until a moment ago, Kate seemed unable to hide her shock. While looking at them, I spoke to Jasmine. "Found a spot you want to shoot at?" When I asked, Jasmine smiled brightly and nodded. "I want to shoot in front of the flower bed you insisted on to the end." She pointed to the flower bed and ran towards it, picking up the equipment beside me. As I watched her tomboyish figure, Kate screamed, "That's Jasmine from the video sharing site, right? Why is she calling you Mom?" At Kate's words, their daughter spoke up. "That's right. Wow, meeting the real deal. Hey, can I get an autograph?" "That's a good idea, Laura. You really are a genius." Impressed by their arrogant attitude, true to their nature as parent and child, I shrugged my shoulders and firmly declined. "Sorry, but you can't. Jasmine does video posting voluntarily. She enjoys shooting and editing. It's not about being famous. Sure, she's become well known, but that's not what she wants to do." "Well, it wouldn't hurt, right? After all, Laura is a genius. A combination of a popular person and a genius makes a good story." Listening to William proudly proclaiming his daughter's genius, I asked, weary, "What exactly makes your daughter a genius?" "So far, I only see a lack of common sense and arrogance." "How dare you say that? Laura has a lot of things to be good at." I wanted to see concrete examples of her genius, but found nothing specific in Kate's claims, causing me to sigh. Seeing that, William, displeased with my attitude, began to brag more about Laura. "You know, Laura never sticks to anything. Too much of a genius, she masters everything too quickly. She's tried so many hobbies but gets bored as soon as she excels. Oh boy, the troubles of having a genius child." Hearing what hardly sounded like a boast, I grew tired. Without much response to his bragging, I moved towards where Jasmine was filming. Behind me, William's family were saying something, but I ignored them and called out to my daughter. "Jasmine, how's the shooting going? Let's go to a cafe when you're done." Jasmine was surrounded by a crowd of people watching her film. Some of them seemed to realize she was Jasmine, making the scene quite lively. "Just need to shoot the ending, and we're done. Hang on a bit longer," she cheerfully answered, waving to the people around her before starting the final scene. "Hey, Jasmine! Film with me!" In an oblivious moment, Laura interrupted the filming. Noticing it, Jasmine smiled at Laura and resumed shooting. After finally finishing, Jasmine found herself encircled by onlookers. Like Laura, they asked for autographs, but she politely declined. Instead, she chatted and interacted joyfully with those who approached her. She was continuing her activities because she enjoyed them, not because she wanted fame. Despite her fame, she never boasted about it. Of course, she hadn't thought about giving autographs, so she couldn't offer one. Then, it would be good to communicate a bit as a way of returning the favor to those who approached her. That's what Jasmine has been thinking and acting on. Laura had interrupted her earlier, but Jasmine wanted to maintain her composure. In fact, I wonder if Laura really understood Jasmine's gentle refusal. After finishing conversations with most people, Jasmine was about to leave. Laura approached her predictably. She didn't understand Jasmine's intentions. "The filming's done, right? So, film with me next." Seeing Jasmine staring at Laura in astonishment, I couldn't hold back and intervened. "Sorry, but Jasmine doesn't do collaborations. That smile earlier was just a polite response to your interruption during filming." "What's that, pleasantries? Learning such things as a child, aren't you raising her wrong?" Kate interjected sarcastically, looking down at Jasmine with crossed arms. Jasmine briefly frowned but remained silent, not retorting to Kate. Seeing that, Kate became more confident and pressed further. "So, are you saying Laura isn't worth filming with? Laura can do anything, she's a genius. It's actually an opportunity to enhance your image. Why don't you read the situation better?" Overwhelmed by that, Jasmine looked at me for guidance. Receiving her gaze, I sighed and replied to Kate, "Enough already. You keep calling your daughter a genius, but there's not a single concrete example. Isn't there something more substantial to boast about?" As I said it, the people around us, who had been listening to our conversation, agreed. Pressed by their words, Kate made a displeased face, but Laura seemed unfazed. Instead, she proudly boasted about her accomplishments. "I got an award at a piano recital. It was for practicing well. And also, at dance school for learning a whole song. I also got an award for never missing school. I've been awarded a lot." Laura was at least over grade 7. Thinking about it, her statements seemed awkward, to say the least. Unaware of that, Laura looked at us expectantly for praise. I exchanged a troubled look with Jasmine, and we could only make helpless faces. The people around us seemed to feel the same, with some even bursting into laughter. Even Kate seemed to read the atmosphere and tried to change the subject forcibly. "By the way, since you're active like this, how much do you earn? You can't possibly afford to live in a condo like this, can you?" Her question seemed desperate, but I decided to reply to avoid rehashing the atmosphere. "Thankfully, we're quite popular on the video sharing site. Of course, we earn an income, but it's saved for Jasmine's future and for buying necessary filming equipment. Sure, this condo is attractive, but we have a house, so we don't need it. Besides, I was part of creating this place, so the success fee is substantial. My current husband runs a company, and combined with his income, moving here wouldn't be a bad idea." I told her everything she might have wanted to know. Predictably, Kate looked displeased and glared at Jasmine and me. Hearing my story, William seemed too surprised to retort. Whereas, Kate was ever bold, and tried to ingratiate herself with me. "So, you created this place. Then, with just a word from you, we could live here, right? Our kids are about the same age, so out of kindness, could you help us?" I couldn't understand what she meant by kindness, but I had no intention of agreeing. Just as I was about to firmly refuse, Laura asked eagerly by misunderstanding something. "Can you really help us live in this condo? We want to live here. Please." At her words, I sighed deeply in exasperation. I decided to set the record straight for once and all. "Sorry, but I can't guarantee you can live here. Sure, I might be able to refer you to the management company with my connections, but there are screenings. Things like what job you do, your income, and your prospects. I'm not in charge of the screenings, so it's not guaranteed. It's up to you, so good luck with that." Hearing that, Kate made her face, while Laura didn't seem to fully understand. Then William butted in, making an unreasonable demand. "My daughter's asking, so make it happen. If you have the connections for creating this place, get us through the screening." Everyone around whispered at his absurd demand. I pondered how to explain the obvious fact, my head aching. "You can't just interfere in the screening process, can you? That's obviously out of my jurisdiction. If you want to live here, overcome it with your own efforts." When I said that, William suddenly became enraged and started to rampage. He began ripping out the flowers from the nearby flower bed and throwing them at me. I stood in the way to protect Jasmine from getting hit, while scolding him. However, for some reason, Kate and Laura followed his lead and started doing the same. Furthermore, while hurling the flowers, Kate shouted insults at us, and Laura hurled verbal abuse at Jasmine. I was busy protecting Jasmine, but people around us started to intervene to stop them. Nonetheless, the three of them refused to listen and kept throwing anything they could grab. Kate picked up a stone lying nearby and was about to throw it. I grabbed her arm to stop her from hitting Jasmine, but Kate carried away and pushed me. Thus, I fell into the flower bed, hitting my head. Seeing that, people around us condemned them more vehemently and tried desperately to stop them. Yet, the three of them continued to act wildly and were soon restrained. Someone had called the police, though I didn't know who, and they arrived upon hearing the commotion. "Who called the cops?" As the police officers restrained him, William shouted, but no one responded. Kate also was restrained by the police and tried to find out who had reported them. Laura stopped her tantrum but began crying upon seeing her parents being held by the police. The noisy scene was suddenly overtaken by the commanding voice of a police officer. "You're under arrest for obstructing official duties." With those words, the place became silent instantly. It seemed William had attacked a police officer and was being arrested on the spot. Holding my head and hugging Jasmine, who was close to tears, I watched the scene unfold. As William was taken away, Kate and Laura were also escorted to the police station. The three of them were put in a police car and gradually disappeared from view. After such a huge uproar caused by William's family, I felt drained as they were easily taken away by the police. Meanwhile, I came to myself by Jasmine's desperate yell. "Mom, you're hurt. Should we go to the hospital? Otherwise, you will." Affected by the chaos, Jasmine finally burst into tears. I hugged her, apologizing for involving her in such an incident. The people around us also expressed their concern, making me feel cared for. Though I was in pain, the fact that Jasmine was safe made it seem insignificant. Every time someone asked, I assured them I was fine, and soon the sound of an ambulance siren was heard. Apparently, someone had called an ambulance as well. When the ambulance arrived, I was taken away with the police officers. As I boarded the ambulance with Jasmine, I glanced back at the flower bed where the flowers had been torn out. As being involved in the construction of a large condominium, I had wanted to mitigate its oppressive presence. So, I established a park on the property and planted flower beds there. I hoped the park would become a place of rest and foster enjoyable conversations. I met my current husband in a park, taking a break from work and admiring the flower beds. He approached me, and we started talking, eventually becoming close. Initially, we only met during lunch breaks, but gradually we began dining out and eventually married. Soon after, we were blessed with Jasmine, and despite it being a late pregnancy, she was born safely. That park with the flower beds had brought me happiness. Therefore, in the projects I was involved in, I wanted to create opportunities for others to find happiness. That was the idea behind that flower bed. Its destruction saddened me deeply, and I was quite shocked. Upon reaching the hospital, treatment began immediately, and I needed a few stitches. Thankfully, it wasn't visible, much to my relief. Seeing it, Jasmine seemed reassured, and by the time we left the hospital, she was smiling again. While waiting for the bill, I was questioned by the police and decided to file a complaint. I also decided to hire a lawyer and ensure that William's family faced appropriate consequences. Thanks to that, Kate was arrested for assault. According to the lawyer, with her parents in police custody, Laura was taken in by Kate's parents. I thought that was unfortunate enough, but she was in for strict re-education from her grandparents. Taken in by her grandparents, she was apparently reprimanded and criticized greatly for her usual behavior. Due to her young age, It seems she is being disciplined strictly for rehabilitation. It will likely lead to challenging days ahead for not only William and Kate but also for Laura. As for me, my injury has been healing well since then. I had the stitches removed recently, so there's no significant injury anymore. Jasmine has become even more popular since that day and has been busy. It turns out that it was one of her followers who called the police and ambulance. After the filming ended, sensing the tense atmosphere, Jasmine quickly switched to live streaming. Thanks to that, when the brawl escalated, one of her followers took action. We are truly grateful for that, as it helped bring the situation under control. Afterward, Jasmine wanted to thank the person and made a call out in a video, but no one came forward. So, we decided to post another video expressing our gratitude. When we went to film the video at the park where the disturbance occurred, we found the flower bed beautifully restored. Apparently, volunteers had fixed it up after the incident, which was a relief. Since then, things have been going surprisingly well. My work on the condominium has led to an increased evaluation of my job. I've been promoted and now am the head of the planning department. Jasmine's video views have skyrocketed, and she continues to post videos joyfully. My current husband is very concerned about us and has been quite worried. Though I'm fully healed and there are no hindrances to my life, he still occasionally checks on my injury. I'm really happy to be with the kind-hearted husband and Jasmine grow up healthy. There are no problems in my work or family life. I look forward to spending more happy times with three of us. Your husband and I are starting a business together. We'll take the sales and the employees. Dorothy and Brian said this with a nasty smirk. I was at a loss for words. As soon as we graduated from college, we started a small business. And this happened just when the business began to turn a profit at last. The two cornered me in the office, laughing. Thanks for everything up to now. But we don't need you anymore. Brian and I can handle it ourselves. Brian nodded to Dorothy's triumphant words. It seemed they had planned to cut me out all along. I clenched my teeth. For considering them as my best friend and a kind husband. But now I see. This is their true nature. If that's the case, so be it. Dorothy. Brian. I have my pride too. And I won't let you trample on it. Bring it on, Dorothy. I'm Karen. 29 years old. I started a small business with Dorothy and Brian, whom I met in college. We call it a handyman service, but mostly we do household chores for others. When we started, there were no other employees, so we managed all the work between the three of us. During that time, Brian proposed to me. I liked him back, so I happily accepted his proposal. Dorothy congratulated us. How kind they both seemed. I thought I was truly blessed with such friends, until the moment I heard this rumor. Dorothy also had feelings for Brian. I'm off, see you. Be careful on your way. Brian said to Dorothy in a light tone as she was leaving for work. You get lost easily. I'm fine. I've been to this client's place several times. The car navigation system knows the way perfectly. Dorothy said confidently. Laughter broke out among the employees. Dorothy was everyone's favorite. Ever since college, she was smart but had her ditzy moments, and they loved her for her goofy character. I liked Dorothy too. We hit it off right after entering college and dreamed of starting our own business. Brian joined us midway, and our dream began to take a more concrete shape. And now, here we are, living that dream. Brian, you should go with her, I'm worried. Ah, Karen, you sure are demanding. Brian shrugged his shoulders as if he was reluctant. The employees still looked amused. Eventually, an older employee named Jennifer agreed to accompany Dorothy. To be honest, I was a bit uncomfortable around Jennifer. So when she was out of sight, I felt a slight sense of relief. Of course, I would never intend to discriminate against any employee. But Jennifer clearly disliked me. It was obvious. I don't know why. Jennifer was bad-mouthing you again. One of the employees whispered to me. It was during break time. I sighed. I don't mind. It's nothing new. But she was saying awful things. Something like Brian was Dorothy's boyfriend and that you stole him. What? I dropped the documents I was holding. They scattered across the table. As I hurriedly gathered them up, I tried to muster a smile. That's terrible. Brian has only ever been interested in me. But according to Jennifer, Brian and Dorothy were the real couple, and I was just in the way. But it was Brian who confessed his feelings to me, and Dorothy never said anything about it. It must be just another baseless rumor. Why does Jennifer always speak ill of you? I don't know. All I could do was shake my head. Jennifer is 63, a veteran among the staff. All I knew was that she lived with her eldest son and his wife after her husband passed away. Just an ordinary woman. So why does she dislike me? Why spread such awful lies? I don't understand. I don't know how to deal with it because I don't understand. Of course, she wasn't always like this. When did it start? Right, it was. On the way home from a welcome party for Jennifer, which was also a get-together with booze. Maybe it was that day. That day? You know, Dorothy is a lightweight. She suddenly started crying that day. Jennifer was comforting and encouraging her, and it started the day after that. Jennifer was a normal woman. But after that day, she began to dislike me. Why? Oh, that makes sense. Another employee, who had been doing paperwork, chimed in. It's well known among us. Dorothy badmouths you when she's drunk. What? I blinked in shock. Hey, that was supposed to be a secret. It's not something that can be hidden forever. Karen, you better be careful around Dorothy. Although, Jennifer is the only one taking the gossip seriously as for now. The male employee said languidly and returned to his work. I was overwhelmed with disbelief. Dorothy, speaking ill of me. Yes. The first employee spoke again, looking uncomfortable. Dorothy starts talking the moment you're out of sight. It's all made-up stories, terrible gossip. No way. I thought this must be some kind of joke. Dorothy is my best friend. I can't believe she would say bad things about me. But the worst part is Brian. Brian? I wondered why Brian was being brought up in this context. As my expression darkened, the employee continued with difficulty. Brian, no matter how awful things Dorothy says, he just laughs and seems to enjoy it, even egging her on. That can't be true. I had stood up from my chair. I picked up my mobile phone. I called Dorothy. Hello. Hey, stop joking around now. What joke? Apparently Jennifer is badmouthing me because of you. That's a horrible story, right? Well. Dorothy paused, seemingly deep in thought. I was hoping she would quickly declare her innocence. Dorothy wouldn't betray me. Hey, Dorothy. What? It was Dorothy's usual, cheerful voice. I felt relieved. After all, what the employees said must be false. Jennifer must have badmouthed me so persistently that everyone started to make up this joke. Seriously. So you found out all of it? Huh? I blurted out in a daze. What did Dorothy just say? I was planning to gradually increase my allies, but no one else fell for it except Jennifer. Maybe it's time to try something different. Dorothy, what are you talking about? Just kidding. Wait, what? The next moment, Dorothy burst out laughing. Don't take it seriously, we're friends, right? I would never do such a thing. Right. I slumped back into my chair, feeling drained. The employees looked at me anxiously. Dorothy was laughing on the other end of the phone. Innocent and lovely Dorothy. She was like everyone's idol. Even now, she's popular among the employees. I like her, too. I thought I did. It was all a lie, right? Yes, all lies. Dorothy's affirmation. Jennifer's attitude, and the employees' rumors. I couldn't tell what was true anymore. About Jennifer. I hesitated. Honestly, I didn't want to talk about it. But Jennifer's attitude towards me was strange. I intended to discuss it with Dorothy and Brian. What's up? She's very harsh towards me. I just think it's going to be hard to work with her moving forward. You're not thinking of firing her, are you? Brian looked at me sternly. Dorothy's smile had faded too. I was unable to look into their eyes, and I looked down. But her gossiping is crossing the line. It must be hard being talked about like that. Dorothy seemed to sympathize with me. She's kind after all, I thought. Then Dorothy said, "But it's funny to watch, isn't it?" What? Nothing. Karen, think it over. Jennifer is our ace employee, and we've worked together for so long. It would be too cruel to fire her now. I think so too. Their opinions were the exact opposite of mine. Indeed, many clients have specifically requested Jennifer. Plus, Jennifer was the first employee we hired after starting the company. I have some kind of attachment to her too. But, like I said before, Jennifer's harshness towards me is because of Dorothy. There are rumors about that. If it's not just me, but Dorothy's reputation falls too. That's unavoidable, Dorothy said with a troubled expression. Because, well, it's the truth. Dorothy. I sighed. Lately, Dorothy has been teasing me excessively. She's manipulating Jennifer to take my place. Even though that can't possibly be true. Really, Karen, you're too nice, Brian suddenly said. I looked at him in surprise, and Brian had a smile on his face. A very unpleasant smile. What Dorothy is saying is true. I was dating Dorothy. Brian, not you too. But along the way, he got greedy. You were better in both grades and popularity. If anyone was to be the boss, it had to be you. So Brian left me for you, Karen. They took turns speaking. Words I didn't want to hear. Stop it. But Karen, you're too naive, aren't you? With that attitude, you can't compete with the cunning folks in other companies. Stop it! I shouted. My throat hurt from suddenly raising my voice. As I rubbed my throat, Dorothy started laughing. Just admit it, Karen. It's all true. I've been feeding Jennifer all this, and she's been taking it seriously. I began to tremble at her words. It's crazy! That's just crazy! Why would you do such thing? Why? It's obvious, isn't it? Dorothy said, curling her lips. You stole Brian from me. Not just that. In school, you were always above me in grades. It was always like that. Because of you, I could never be the first. But Dorothy, you were chosen as the most beautiful girl in college. That was because I worked hard to please everyone and put on a friendly face. But what about you, Karen? Without any effort, you made it into the top 10. Don't joke with me. Who's joking now? I had forgotten about the pain in my throat. Tears were streaming from both eyes. How disgusting. Crying like that. Exactly. Dorothy's face is still the best. I made a mistake in choosing a partner. Yes, indeed. Dorothy briefly glared at Brian, probably despising him for his opportunistic nature. But the next moment, she turned a sweet smile and voice to Brian. Come back to me, Brian. No. Dorothy, what are you saying? Right, even without Karen, the company can go on. Maybe, Dorothy, you should be the president, and I can assist you. You don't want to be the president yourself? I don't want a role that just dumps responsibilities on me. I'm more suited to being number 2. Brian said this casually. This is nonsense. A nightmare. I need to wake up quickly. I can't endure this any longer. As I was crouching and crying, Dorothy suddenly said, Hey, Karen. If you think you've done anything bad to me, I'll give you a chance to atone. Atone? What sin do I have? About Brian? I really didn't know. But if it's true, I feel sorry. The moment I looked up. Give me this company and Brian, Dorothy said, smiling. Your husband and I are taking over the business. We'll take the sales and employees. The two of them laughed triumphantly. It was a terrifying smirk. I finally understood. They had been planning on using me all along and to kick me out of the company once I'm no longer needed. Thanks for your hard work until now. But we don't need you anymore. Brian and I can manage on our own. That's right, that's right. I'm remarrying Dorothy, so I don't need you anymore. Their words made something inside me snap. They really had the nerve to say whatever they wanted. I have my pride too. To be trampled on so cruelly. I won't just walk away quietly. Silently, I glared at them. Then, it was my turn to smile at them. Suit yourselves. Oh, how magnanimous of you. I slipped past the two of them and walked away. Dorothy still looked proud. She must think I'm being docile out of a sense of defeat. Let her interpret it however she wants. We're not friends anymore, anyway. Brian, I'll write up the divorce papers. Just like that? Brian seemed a bit taken aback. No regrets? You don't fully understand my charm? Whatever. Dorothy crossed her legs, looking pleased with herself. I turned back to them and said, now, I can go to France without any worries. Huh? Dorothy let out a surprised exclamation. France? What's that about? I got a job offer from a company there. I was turning it down because I was responsible for our company. But I guess that doesn't matter anymore. Yeah. Go wherever you want. After saying that, Dorothy added in a lower voice. What company is it, may I ask? It is. I gave them the name. It was a globally renowned corporation that even children would know in this era. Dorothy's voice and expression grew frantic. Why are you being scouted and not me? I didn't get any offers. Neither did I. Brian added, looking puzzled. Brian, you're just a freebie. Dorothy bluntly stated. Seriously? Brian looked dejected, but in reality, Dorothy and I were the ones who started the business. Brian was more like an assistant, or something like that. He was always like a little chick following behind. Even for Brian, it seems, was upset by Dorothy's manner of speaking. Dorothy, you weren't invited either. That's right. Karen and I were a team. We've been through everything together, so why is it that Karen is the only one getting attention from big companies? I should mention. I said, exasperated. Dorothy might have been doing the publicity and noticeable work, but the important, behind-the-scenes work? That was all me. Like sending emails to clients, for example. Dorothy couldn't be bothered, but I made sure to send a thank you email to every customer. Partly hoping they would use our services again, but mostly because I was happy they chose our company. I kept sending emails, expressing my gratitude. Then, one day, one of the clients replied. Their grandchild works for the company we just mentioned, and they talked about my work. That led to them wanting to meet me. Come to think of it, you went to France alone last month. Brian said, suddenly realizing. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Well, I thought it was just a trip. Brian seemed to be making excuses. Dorothy looked furious. Until just now, she thought she had one. But again, it turned out to be my victory. That's why I'm going to France. I waved my hand and left the office. I heard Dorothy's screams, but I could care less. After signing the divorce papers as agreed, I arranged for a moving company. Oh, right. I came up with an idea. I called another company on my mobile phone. Hello. I'd like to sell all the furniture in my house. I'm used to negotiating. I wrapped up the conversation efficiently. Then, there was a noise at the door. Brian had returned. Hey, Karen. What is it? This house, you bought it, but if you're going to France, you won't need it, right? So, it's fine. I've already arranged to sell the furniture and the house, I said cheerfully. Brian screamed. Why would you do such a thing? Where am I supposed to live from tomorrow? Go stay with Dorothy, I said bluntly. I was a bit surprised by my own words. I realized I had no feelings left for Brian. You're not selling the company too, are you? That's impossible. Dorothy, my co-owner, would need to agree. Right. Brian nodded, relieved. From tomorrow, Dorothy will be running the company alone. Be careful. Dorothy doesn't do anything troublesome. Your threat won't work on me. I'm just warning you, I said and went to the kitchen. I'll make dinner. What? Until the divorce is finalized, we are still married. And I have no intention of shirking my duties as a wife. I've always made meals every day. No matter how busy, I never neglected my household duties. That was my pride. Though today would be the last time I'd cook for Brian. Well, then. Tonight's dinner is beef stew. I splurged a little on some good meat this time. I sautéed it with onions and butter, carefully. With tomato salad and juice, tonight's dinner was ready. We ate facing each other. There was hardly any conversation. But the words Brian said strangely stayed with me. This is the last time I'll eat your cooking, Karen. Did you like it? It was okay. Brian, ever childish, never praised my cooking until the end. Yet, I was content. I had remained a good wife till the end. The next day, after confirming the divorce papers were processed, I headed to the office. There was a buzz of activity inside. As I entered, one of the employees approached me. Karen, is it true you're being forced out of the company? It's true. I explained again that I was leaving the company and heading to France alone. A murmur spread among the employees. Karen is amazing, as expected. Karen, we can't run the company without you. I'm quitting this company. Don't say that. I tried to calm them. But, except for one, they all insisted on quitting. I'll stay. Of course, it was Jennifer who said that. The youngest employee looked at Jennifer accusingly. I stopped them just as they were about to speak. Instead, I spoke. Jennifer. Yes? Her reply was curt, as I had grown accustomed to. In fact, thinking I wouldn't hear her voice again made me somewhat sad. Dorothy is flashy and loves attention. Brian is indecisive and rarely takes initiative. Please take care of those two. That's what I was planning to. Jennifer glanced at me and nodded, as if she had figured it out all along. Even if I'm the only employee left, I will support them. I'm not like the other ungrateful employees. What did you say? Stop. I held them back while looking around the office. I had done well to grow the company this far. What would become of it now, losing all employees except Jennifer? I wouldn't be there to see it anyways. Karen! What are you doing in our company? Dorothy's voice rang out. This place was no longer mine. Her footsteps were my cue to leave the office. Next, I headed to a restaurant arranged by the client. And their grandchild waiting for me. We parted with smiles. But I didn't take up their offer. I still had things to do in Japan. What do you think you're doing? Dorothy barged into my office while I was working. I looked at her face while sitting. What? Karen, weren't you going to France? Why are you starting a business in America? That's right. In the end, I didn't go to France. Instead, I decided to start over in America. The reason was simple. How could I leave the employees who admire me in a difficult situation? So, you poach our employees and then act like it's nothing. I didn't poach anyone. They came to me because they couldn't work under you, Dorothy. As they declared, all employees except Jennifer quit Dorothy's company. I couldn't just abandon them and go to France alone. I felt obligated to provide them a stable working environment again. Jennifer is there for you. One person can't cover everything. And Brian is useless. Isn't managing a part of your job as a president? I replied nonchalantly. Dorothy groaned, at a loss for words. I sighed and closed my laptop. Dorothy. It's not bad to want things. People need ambition. Whether it's born from an inferiority complex or a motivation, I think it's okay. Are you lecturing me? That's not the point. As a president, Dorothy, you have a duty to keep Brian and Jennifer away from difficult situations. And of course, if the business fails, it will affect you too. It would make me sad. That company is like a child to me. I know that. Dorothy bit her lip. But I don't know what to do. Jobs that were coming in smoothly are now reducing. The online reviews are terrible. They write it was better with the former president. Customers are honest. I shrugged. Do you send thank you emails to your customers? Are you polite to them at work? Stop nagging! Dorothy got angry. Such a child. I was amazed at my lack of judgment. Or maybe Dorothy just fooled me well. Probably both. Before showing her true nature, Dorothy seemed kind and graceful. Who knew she was this selfish and childish? Brian seems lost too. Another email. After Dorothy left crying, I opened my laptop again. There was an email from Brian. I didn't even need to check it. He was probably asking if he could join my company, maybe even hinting at reconciliation. How selfish can a man be? Doesn't he feel ashamed to be dependent on a woman? Brian and Dorothy broke up, it seems. A female employee said, bringing a cup of tea. Is that so? They never remarried. As soon as Brian heard about you starting a new business, he initiated the breakup. I heard from him directly. I propped my chin on my hand. I needed to meet Brian to clear things up. That weekend, I called Brian to a cafe near the company. He looked happy and was overly considerate. It's been a while. How have you been? Yes, well, if only you and Dorothy in front of me could get it together, I'd feel more at ease. But Brian's attitude suggested that was unlikely. The food tastes better when I'm looking at your face, Karen. Oh, but the food you cooked was even better. Is that so? Even though he never once praised my cooking while we were married. I checked my watch and said shortly, I have no intention of remarrying you, nor hiring you at my company. Don't say that. For the sake of our past as a couple. We're no longer a couple. I dismissed Brian's wishful thinking. Well then, I'll be going. Wait! If you persist, I might have to consult a lawyer. What? At the mention of a lawyer, Brian looked frightened. Good. Cowardly Brian wouldn't have the nerve to bother me further. I paid for my share and decided to return to the office. Brian, holding his wallet, shouted, You called me here and you want to split the bills? Are you offering to pay the full amount? Leaving a groaning Brian behind, I left the cafe. Unfortunately, the company Dorothy ran went under. Her reviews and her attitude drove customers away. It's a pity for Jennifer, who lost her job, but it couldn't be helped. Please, hire me at your company. Please, I beg you. Now, they are both bowing their heads to me. After all their arrogance towards me, what could you possibly say to me? Please leave. I said very politely, yet distantly. There's no place for you here. It's because you started a rival company. Dorothy exposed her true self again. Brian was shocked, but Dorothy kept shouting. I know all our customers went to your place. I didn't lead them there. I spoke in a soothing tone. Both the employees and the customers made their choices on their own. Do you think I alone could influence so many people? Dorothy knew the truth deep down. What was right and what was wrong. The mistake of driving me out of the company. Her failure to take her duty as president seriously. It all comes down to one thing: people's trust. Now, both of you, please leave. If you continue to make a scene, I'll have to call the police. No way! Brian cried out in pain, while Dorothy cradled her head and crouched down. Leaving those two behind, I returned to my work. There are customers and employees waiting for me. I can't afford to stop. Anthony. That's the name of the person who introduced me to the large corporation. He works there himself and has started contacting me regularly since then. I enjoy talking to him a lot. Informative, and his choice of words is laced with humor. I'm glad I got to know you, Karen. He wrote in one of his emails, in a heartfelt tone. It's been a while since I've had a Japanese friend, being abroad. Friend. That word pained my heart. I was betrayed by those I thought were my closest friends. But I emerged victorious. I'm not weak enough to be outdone and left behind. That incident made me realize my strength. After some hesitation, I replied, I'm also glad to have met you, Anthony. If you ever come back to America, let me know. I'd be happy to have a meal together. I still can't use the word friend. It's not Anthony, but the word friend I'm wary of. Yet, I'm confident that soon I can call Anthony a friend. I can't be rude to someone who opens their heart to me, especially when I'm starting to trust Anthony. Speaking of trust, the same goes for my employees. I am still grateful to them for believing in me and following me. Karen. Yes, yes. Responding to the puppyish call, I stand up from my chair, feeling myself naturally giving a smile on my face. A wife who neglects her housework is not needed in this house, right? Such a useless woman does not deserve to be my son's wife. Leave this house! Chloe, my mother-in-law, said this to me, and with a smile, I replied, Understood. I left the house and went back to my parents' home. Probably Chloe will storm into my parents' home. I don't know what will happen to me from now on. I am Sophia, a 25-year-old housewife. I married Timothy last year and have been living a smooth life. Except for one thing, Chloe's presence makes our newlywed life less peaceful. Chloe is a son-obsessed, clingy mother. Especially since Timothy is an only child. We live at a medium distance and meet only a few times a year. Whenever I see Chloe, she annoyingly checks whether I am taking good care of Timothy. Last time we met, you're taking care of Timothy properly, right? Listen, Timothy loves meat and hates fish. You remember that, right? I remember you said during our first meeting that your favorite dish to cook is fish stew. If you're serving Timothy the same thing, I won't let it slide. She said. Chloe seems desperate to make sure I am doing my household duties and making meals that Timothy enjoys. Timothy loves the fish stew I make, and we have never had any trouble with meals. I can let it go, but she looked at my clothes, saying, You're dressed so inappropriately. When standing beside Timothy, you should dress to match him. A short skirt? How vulgar! Are you trying to tempt other men? I was utterly baffled. My skirt was knee-length and quite modest. Timothy has a simple style, and my outfit that day matched his. It seemed Chloe didn't want me to outshine Timothy. When you two are together, everyone's eyes go to Sophia. It's because of the bright colors of your clothes. From now on, wear a white shirt and black pants. Don't wear anything else. Chloe, beaming as if she had a great idea, got a wry smile from me. Thankfully, Timothy stood up for me. What are you talking about, Mom? I think Sophia is cute no matter what she wears, and she should wear what she likes. Stop hassling her with your weird demands. Saying. Chloe often comes up with these nonsensical requests. On the other hand, my father-in-law is harmless but doesn't contribute positively either. He always seems preoccupied, either reading the newspaper or watching news on TV, never joining in our conversations. He turned a blind eye to whatever Chloe said to me, right in front of him. I've tried to talk to him several times since getting married. But because he shows no interest in chatting, the conversation dies down quickly. Honestly, visiting my in-laws has always been a burdensome event for me. Then one day, I started feeling unwell and couldn't manage the household chores. I thought my headache and slight fever would pass, but Timothy was worried and decided we should visit a doctor the next day. It was a Saturday, and Timothy had the day off. Our usual clinic was only open in the morning on Saturdays. The doctor asked if I could be pregnant, and I remembered my period was late.
Maybe I am pregnant,
I said, and took a pregnancy test right there. The result was positive. We immediately visited a nearby gynecologist, and it was confirmed I was pregnant. Timothy and I were overjoyed. Especially Timothy, with tears streaming down his face. "Sophia, thank you." He kept thanking me over and over again. But when we reported the pregnancy to our parents, Chloe showed up at our house carrying a huge bag. I was suffering from severe morning sickness and was holed up in the bathroom, unable to come out. As the doorbell was repeatedly rung, I hurried out of the bathroom to answer it, and there was Chloe. "Chloe? You were trying to pretend you weren't home, weren't you?" "No, I was just in the bathroom." "I don't care, just let me in." I staggered to the door and opened it. Chloe was holding a large Boston bag, and I had a bad feeling. "We're going to live together until the baby grows up." I was stunned by Chloe's sudden words. I couldn't just leave her at the entrance, so I let her into the house. "I'll make some coffee," I said, and headed to the kitchen, and called Timothy while waiting for the water to boil. It was a weekday afternoon, and Timothy was at work as usual. I was worried if he would answer, but he did after a few rings. "Sophia? Is something wrong?"
Hey, Chloe came over. She's carrying a big bag. Do you know anything?
Eh? I haven't heard anything. But she said she would come by soon. I never thought she'd come when I'm not home.
I see. I'll ask Chloe for the details.
Sorry. If Mom says something weird, you can kick her out. Oh, sorry, I have to hang up. Timothy seemed busy and hung up.
As if I can just kick her out because she says something weird. He really doesn't get it.
I sighed a little. Timothy is generally kind and cherishes me, but he doesn't think through the consequences of prioritizing my wishes. I can imagine the uproar Chloe would make if I tried to kick her out. For now, I just prepared the coffee and served it to Chloe. "Chloe, what brings you here today?" "Timothy is at work. He'll be home around 6 p.m. "This doesn't look good." "What?" Confused by Chloe's sudden remark, I watched as she took a sip of the coffee I had prepared. Young people are hopeless. They can't even make a decent cup of coffee. Poor Timothy, having to drink this. I'll teach you how to make coffee right now. Come here. I'm sorry, my morning sickness is quite bad. Could we do this some other time when I'm feeling better? It's just morning sickness. It's fine, you'll feel better if you eat something. Come on, hurry up. Then, for an hour, Chloe's coffee-making lesson began. As I started feeling nauseous, Chloe opened the cupboard on her own, took out a plate, and placed a piece of bread. "Eat this. You'll feel better if you eat." The smell of the bread made me feel even sicker, and I ran to the bathroom. With a headache and nausea, my mind was a blur. For the 3 hours until Timothy came home, I was holed up in the bathroom. Chloe kept knocking on the door in front of the bathroom, but I didn't have the energy to respond. Around 6 p.m., Timothy came home. First, Timothy was surprised to see Chloe making a fuss in front of the bathroom. I had fallen asleep in the bathroom, and when I woke up, Chloe and Timothy were arguing outside. "Why did you suddenly come?" "Sophia is suffering from morning sickness, don't be a nuisance. I came to supervise whether this girl is properly doing her housework as a housewife. I bet she's just using her morning sickness as an excuse to be lazy. I was shocked that she can't even make coffee properly. The coffee Sophia makes is delicious. And what's this supervision about? Sophia isn't someone who would use morning sickness as an excuse to slack off on housework. If she couldn't do it, maybe her morning sickness is really bad? Sophia, you were holed up in the bathroom for 3 hours. Timothy is so naive, he's easily deceived. I really need to be here to guide Sophia. I got married to make those around me happy. Even if Sophia were slacking off, I wouldn't mind. As long as she's doing what she wants and staying by my side, I don't want anything more. No need for guidance. Please go home. I smiled at Timothy's words. The symptoms of my morning sickness had subsided, so I opened the bathroom door. Welcome home, Timothy. Chloe, sorry for leaving you alone. You! How can you lock yourself in the bathroom when you have a guest? What kind of nerve do you have? Well, I couldn't show Chloe my messy state, so I locked myself in the bathroom. I'm truly sorry about that. Anyway, I've made dinner, so make sure you eat all of it. With that, Chloe said, and Timothy pointed to the entrance. No, Mom, please go home. No way. I've already told Dad that I'm staying here. I don't trust young people. See, she didn't even prepare dinner because she was holed up in the bathroom with morning sickness. I'm definitely not going back. Chloe stubbornly refused to move. Forcing her out would not satisfy Chloe, so I decided to allow her to stay. Then, maybe you can stay for a while. But I knew Timothy was worried about me, but kicking her out now would only create more trouble later. I smiled at Timothy to reassure him. It's okay. After that, Chloe tried to force me to eat chicken. Lately, I've been mainly eating vegetables and fruits. With severe morning sickness, even the sight of fried food, let alone bread, made me feel sick. Chloe complained about this too, but Timothy was completely on my side, which was a great help. The next day, worried about leaving me alone with Chloe.
Call me if anything happens. It's okay to lock yourself in the bathroom.
Timothy said to me before going to work. As expected, Chloe complained about everything I did. If I cleaned, she complained I was too slow. If I did laundry, she said I should care more for Timothy's clothes than mine. Each time. All right. I just responded. When morning sickness hit and I rushed to the bathroom, Chloe would knock on the door. When I came out, keep bathroom visits under 5 minutes, she said. Chloe did nothing but complain, while I struggled with housework in the midst of severe morning sickness. I knew this would happen when I allowed Chloe to stay, but honestly, I wanted her to go back to the in-laws' house soon. I did as much as Chloe said as I could without overexerting myself. Timothy, except for one day when he was late due to a company drinking party, came home early without overtime, and there didn't seem to be any major problems. After about 5 days of living like this, Chloe finally said something to me. That day, my morning sickness was particularly bad, and in the middle of cleaning, I left the vacuum cleaner and rushed to the bathroom, unable to come out for many minutes. Then Chloe stood in front of the bathroom and began to yell. Hey you! Weren't you in the middle of cleaning? Are you expecting me to do it? Enough is enough! Claiming to have severe morning sickness, are you just slacking off? Thinking you can just hide in the bathroom? I didn't have the energy to respond to Chloe, but she kept complaining endlessly. The symptoms of my morning sickness had subsided, but I didn't feel like facing the continually fussing Chloe, so I just sat on the toilet seat waiting for Chloe to calm down. As I was sighing, wondering whether to call Timothy. A wife who neglects her housework is not needed in this house, right? Such a useless woman does not deserve to be my son's wife. Leave this house, Chloe suddenly said. I immediately came out of the bathroom and understood. I replied with a broad smile and went straight to my room. Chloe followed me, looking puzzled, but I locked the door to my room, making sure she couldn't enter. Then, I packed a travel bag with some clothes and valuables that I had stored in my closet. Knowing Chloe would try to stop me if I left now, I waited until she left the front of my room. Chloe kept knocking on my room's door, but after waiting for about 2 hours, she finally left. I heard a door close in the distance, Probably her going to the bathroom. I grabbed my bag and immediately left the house, getting a taxi to my parents' home. When I arrived at my parents' house, my mom, who was a housewife and at home, was very surprised. My dad wasn't at work, so I explained the situation to my mom first.
I understand that Chloe loves her son and doesn't think highly of me. But still, it's annoying to be complained at up close.
My mom didn't get particularly angry, but just gave a wry smile. Well, mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict is common everywhere. It might be good for you to stay home for a while. Chloe seems like she can look after Timothy. You think so? Aren't you going to get mad about what she's doing to your daughter? Well, Sophia, you must be up to something, right? My mom seemed to see right through everything. Then, I contacted Timothy and told him I would stay at my parents' house until Chloe went back home. Timothy also felt it was safer that way, and I relaxed at my parents' house for the first time in a long time. The next day, as expected, Chloe came to my parents' house. When I opened the door and showed my face, Chloe turned red and started making a fuss. Why are you back at your parents' house? Hurry back and make Timothy's dinner. It's a failure as a wife to go to such lengths to avoid housework. But I replied with a smile. Eh? I just did what you told me to, right? You said to leave, didn't you? Are you saying I should have slept outside instead of going back to my parents' house? What's with this girl? So irritating. I didn't really mean for you to leave. I'm just saying you should do your housework properly. I was doing my housework as you told me to. I don't understand why I have to do it quickly, but the quality of my housework doesn't change just because I went to the bathroom in the middle. Then Chloe's eyes narrowed in anger. Don't talk nonsense. When I was pregnant, I didn't go to the bathroom so much. Eating makes the nausea go away. Despite that, you don't listen. Then, from behind me, Mom came. With a troubled look, Mom gently spoke to Chloe. Chloe, you had a different symptom, didn't you? My daughter has different symptoms. She's a different person, so it's natural for her morning sickness symptoms to be different. Please don't assume she's the same just because you experienced it. What are you saying? Children should listen to their parents. At that, Chloe seemed taken aback for a moment, and I smiled. Huh. I see. So Chloe, you just wanted to manipulate me to do as you wish? No one will act exactly as you want them to. That includes Stephen as well. Confused by my words, Chloe tilted her head. Stephen? Your husband. You're so busy meddling in your son's household that you've completely forgotten about your own. Perhaps it's time you return to your own home? Then Chloe started making a phone call. Probably to her husband's number. But the call didn't connect, it seemed like she was blocked, and in a panic, Chloe rushed back home. Later, I heard from Timothy that when Chloe returned to the in-laws' house, there was only a divorce application stamped by her husband and a note with a single line on the table. The note apparently said that he would take all the retirement pay as the distribution of property, and everything else would be left to her. Chloe tried contacting her husband at his workplace, but he had already retired, and his whereabouts became unknown. But in reality, he hasn't retired from his job yet. He was staying for a month for handover and had asked the company to tell Chloe that he had retired if she called. Actually, Timothy and I knew where he was. He was staying in a business hotel and planning to live with a relative in a distant region after retirement. We were supposed to inform him when Chloe filed for divorce, and he said he wanted to start a new life then. About a week ago, when Chloe came to my house and it got late, I called him. Chloe is at our house, are you okay, Stephen? Aren't you lonely by yourself? When I asked him kindly, Raphael, who usually hardly spoke, opened up about his true feelings. Maybe because it was over the phone and not face-to-face, he could speak without stress.
Sophia, you're the only one who worries about someone like me. My wife has always treated me like an ATM, never as a husband. When Timothy was young, if I tried to play with him, she'd say, "Don't touch him, you're dirty, stay away." Maybe that's why Timothy became unsure how to interact with me. I've always been timid and lived a rather dull life under my wife's thumb. You're right, I've always been lonely.
At that moment, I thought I could use Fael to drive Chloe away. There would still be interactions with Chloe in the future. If I forced her out now, I could be endlessly complained at. In the worst case, if Chloe persuaded Fael to leave their house and said they had nowhere to go, they might both end up at our house, making it difficult for us to refuse. I discussed it with Timothy, and he had been aware since he was young that his parents were a sham couple and wanted to do something about it. I had Timothy pretend to be working overtime and visit the in-laws' house to have a heart-to-heart talk with Fael. Fael then confessed to Timothy that he wanted a divorce from Chloe. So, we decided to have Fael proceed with the preparations for the divorce. I had been waiting for the right moment when Chloe would seriously listen to me. I thought she might calm down a bit in a place away from her own territory, like my parents' house, and thankfully, it worked better than expected. Faced with her own issues, Chloe quickly returned to the in-laws' house, so I decided to go back to my house too. Timothy and I then persuaded Chloe. We carefully explained to her how she had been making Fael suffer, that Fael wanted to be free, and that if she continued to be difficult, Fael was prepared to take the matter to court. We warned her that if it came to a court case, both Timothy and I would side with Fael. Finally, Chloe stamped the divorce papers and submitted them to the office. After that, Chloe ended up living alone in the in-laws' house. She seemed lonely and wanted to live in our house, but Timothy firmly refused.
If you come here, Sophia will go back to her parents' house. If that happens, I'll never consider you as my mother again. Just like you ignored Dad, I'll ignore you as if you didn't exist.
With Timothy's firm statement, Chloe, dejected, went back to the in-laws' house. I feel fortunate to have such a reliable husband. As for Fael, as soon as Timothy informed him about the finalized divorce, he immediately moved out of the relative's house and into a small apartment. He got a job in the same field as before his retirement. Though his income dropped a bit, he's more relaxed than when he lived with Chloe and now happily immerses himself in his hobbies every day. Later, I safely gave birth to a baby. A healthy girl. When I'm in trouble, my mom helps as much as possible, and Chloe is only allowed to meet my daughter when I permit it. Thanks to this, I'm managing to raise my child without stress. I believe that, though there will be challenges ahead, as long as I'm with Timothy, who cares deeply for me, we can overcome anything.
You always look beautiful. Today, too. You're nothing like my wife. I wish I could marry you soon.
It was in the middle of the night when I woke up to go to the bathroom. I heard a surprising conversation from the living room. I'd also prefer a beautiful mom. I'd be happy that it could happen. Apparently, my husband and son were on a video call with someone. From the conversation, it seemed likely that it was my husband's mistress, and shockingly, my son was also talking with the woman. What in the world is going on? After all the times they've ignored me, to do something like this. For the past month, I've been treated as if I didn't exist by the two of them. Ignored completely, even when I spoke right in front of them, and on top of that, the meals I cooked were thrown in the trash. I felt my heart turning cold. And so, I vowed to get my revenge. My name is Lucy, a 39-year-old housewife. My husband Albert is a 45-year-old office worker, and our son Frederick is a 14-year-old middle school student. Our family was just an ordinary, average one, living happily together. Albert had an average income for his age and a normal look. But he was a very kind man. Our son, in the 8th grade, was in his rebellious phase, not listening to me, but I still adored him as my sweet boy. I worked hard as a housewife, doing everything all I could to support our family. However, our peaceful happiness shattered suddenly one day. It all started a month ago. Frederick, dinner's ready. One evening, I called out to my son, but he completely ignored me. Well, it's just a teenage behavior, I thought. At that time, I didn't care much. I'll leave them there in plastic wrap. I just said that and left it alone. But, I noticed something was off when my husband came home. Welcome back. Dinner's ready. I called out my husband, but he also ignored me. Then, my son came out of his room, running up to my husband. "Dad, welcome back. Did you buy dinner?" "Yeah, your favorite burgers." "Awesome. Meat's the best, right?" Then, my husband and son threw the dinner I made, with the plates, into the trash. "What the heck? What are you doing?" Ignoring me completely, they began eating the burgers from the grocery store which they had spread on the table. "Why have you been ignoring me all this time?" I asked for a reason, but both my husband and son just silently ate their burgers, as if they couldn't hear me. I felt like I had become invisible. After finishing, they returned to their rooms, leaving the mess behind. Crying, I picked up the plates from the trash can. I ended up throwing away the burger trashes they left behind. Since that day, for a whole month, I was treated as if I was non-existent. No matter what I said or did, it was as if I was invisible to them. From about a week later, I gave up and started making meals just for myself. My parents are farmers and they send fresh, delicious vegetables to our house. I used these vegetables to make meals, thinking of my family's health, but it was unbearable to see them thrown away uneaten every day. Eventually, even the meals I made for myself got thrown away by them when I wasn't looking. There was even a time when they deliberately crushed the fresh vegetables which my parents set right in front of me. This is kind of a stress reliever, huh? Why are you doing this? Did I do something wrong? Tell me and I'll fix it. They continued to stomp on the vegetables, laughing mockingly, as if they couldn't see me no matter how much I cried and screamed. Then, my husband did something unbelievable. "This one too, no need for it anymore, I'll throw it away. It wouldn't fetch much even if I sold it." He took off his wedding ring from his left ring finger and threw it into the trash can. It was supposed to be the symbol of our precious bond. That was the last straw for me, and I shut my heart down. I couldn't believe he would go as far as to throw away our wedding ring. What is he thinking? My sadness and anger finally reached the limit. I secluded myself in my room. From behind my room's door, I could hear my husband and son laughing together, which only deepened my sorrow. Why did things turn out this way? What happened to them? Confused and distressed, I spent a month crying alone in my room. One late night, while walking to the bathroom, I overheard a joyful conversation of my husband and my son from the living room. I felt lonely, knowing I was no longer part of their world. But then, they started a video call with someone, and the conversation that ensued was unbelievable. "Sophie, you look beautiful today, too. You're nothing like my wife. I wish I could marry you soon." "Really? Ditch that wrinkled and spotted woman fast, and marry Sophie. I'd be so happy to have such a beautiful mom." I couldn't hear the other person's voice, but my husband and son were praising someone over the phone. "Mother? What are they talking about?" It was unbelievable. From their conversation, it was clear my husband was having an affair, and my son knew and was encouraging it. Their terrible conversation continued. "Lucy really is a foolish woman, isn't she? Now that she's shut herself in her room, we don't have to see her wrinkled, spotted face, which is such a relief. It's hilarious. She really seems to know we can't see her." They were mocking me. I felt my heart was freezing. I knew my husband was working hard but was being passed over for promotion at work. I believed my son was just being rebellious because of his age. That's why I had been patient until now. But this was too much. What was my endurance for? Knowing the truth ignited the anger that had been smoldering inside me. I couldn't forgive this, not even because they were family. At that moment, I decided to take revenge. For the next 2 months, I researched my husband's mistress, waiting for the right moment for revenge. Then, one day, my husband approached me. "Hey, I need to talk to you." "Oh, it's been a while since you came to talk to me. Are you done ignoring me?" "Yeah, you're of no use to me anymore." My husband handed me divorce papers with a nasty smile. And my son was grinning beside him. "I've found someone else. Leave this house." I took the divorce papers from the table with no expression. "Fine," I answered. They were surprised, as if they didn't expect my agreement. "Huh? You know things very well. We could have divorced sooner then? I had a feeling it would come to this. I already packed. I'll leave tomorrow morning." "Oh, okay. Anything else you want to say?" "What do you want me to say? Beg you not to throw me away?" "No, just sign the divorce papers." My husband seemed a bit let down, but I didn't care and signed the papers, returning them to him. They probably didn't expect that things wouldn't go so smoothly. They looked at each other, but then laughed, as if it was fine as long as I agreed to the divorce. I wonder how long their smug smiles will last. They had no idea that hell was waiting for them after this. The only one who knew it at this point was me. I was laughing inside myself. The next day, I packed my bags and decided to go back to my parents' house. Then, "Thank you for everything up to now." "You really don't regret it?" "I can reconsider if you want." "Why?" "You're the one who wanted a divorce, right? Did you think I'd be crying and begging you to stay?" "What did you say?" "Dad, it's fine. We won't be troubled without a woman like her." "That's true. She's a woman who no longer matters to us." My husband seemed to have mixed feelings about me agreeing so easily to the divorce. But that was no longer of my business. The husband I loved had already changed. The husband I knew before would never have treated me like I didn't exist or laughed in such an unpleasant way. I felt the last 15 years of our marriage were in vain. Goodbye. Please take care. What happens to them after this has nothing to do with me. After all, my husband himself said that I no longer mattered to them. Upon my return to my parents' home, they welcomed me warmly. "Dad, Mom, I'm sorry. The vegetables you sent were either thrown away or trampled on by my husband and son, and they all went to waste. I truly felt sorry for not being able to appreciate my parents' kindness. Wasting food brings punishment. I've seen plenty of people like them suffering." My father was concerned about the scars of my heart. Feeling the warmth of my parents after a long time, I couldn't stop my tears. Meanwhile, the hell for my ex-husband and son was just beginning. Within a week of our divorce and returning to my parents' house, my ex-husband and son came rushing to our doorstep. The moment they saw my face as I opened the door, they started making a scene. "Lucy, help us! We were deceived! That's what I told you, Dad, it was suspicious. No, you never said that. You were happy about getting a beautiful mother instead of Lucy." Hearing their ugly quarrel, I managed to keep from laughing and responded calmly. "What? You just realized? Shouldn't it have been obvious? You're really foolish. You knew about it? Of course. Sophie, right? There's no way a woman that beautiful would be interested in a man like you." My ex-husband gasped in surprise. Sophie was my husband's mistress. He was quite shocked that I knew what Sophie looked like. Actually, after hearing their conversation in the living room, I sneaked out of my room while they were sleeping and checked my ex-husband's phone, which was charging in the living room. The phone was locked, probably as a precaution, but I knew he used his birthday as the password, so it was easy to open. I was astounded by his lack of security awareness and how he underestimated me, thinking I wouldn't know his birthday. Well, anyways, I opened his text messages and found a lot of exchanges between him and Sophie, like a couple in love. Just thinking about it now makes me nauseous. But Sophie's profile picture was too beautiful to be true. She has exotic features on her face, so beautiful that she could be an idol or a celebrity. No, it was definitely suspicious. There was no reason for such a beautiful woman to be attracted to an average man like him. So, I did an image search with Sophie's photo. Nowadays, you can search the internet using photos, not just keywords. That's when a shocking truth came to light. That Sophie, she's actually a middle-aged man, just like you. There was a warning posted on the internet about a marriage scam artist. Just to be sure, I asked a police officer friend from my school days, and it turned out to be true. Even a famous manga artist got caught in this kind of scam and lost $750,000.
No way! I did a video call with her. It was definitely that beautiful woman.
My husband was desperately trying to deny it, seemingly unwilling to believe. My son, too, was dumbfounded, thinking it couldn't be a scam.
But suddenly, we couldn't get in touch anymore just as we were about to get married. She ran off with our money.
Oh, you donated quite a lot, didn't you?
I believed that beautiful woman was going to be my mom. We even talked through video calls.
But nowadays, you know, even in video calls, with software, a man can pretend to be a woman. Did you know? These days, gender transformation tools can change one's gender and appearance in calls, making them look like a completely different person. The voice can be easily altered from male to female, and the facial expressions change during the conversation, so it's hard to tell it's fake. It's truly a terrifying era.
No way! My Sophie is a middle-aged man?
When I saw Sophie's real face on the internet, I laughed so hard at the difference.
Horrible, Mom! You knew and still abandoned us? I lost my savings too!
Horrible? Have you already forgotten what you have done to me? Listening to them act as if they were the victims, all I could do was shaking my head. Ignoring me as if I didn't exist, not responding when I spoke to you, throwing away the meals I made. At the end, you chose to divorce. You were the ones who went away first. Never call me Mom again. What? You're still mad? I'm sorry, let's make up. We're family, right? We're strangers now. So I don't care. This is the end you chose. Take responsibility for your own choices. When I rejected them, my son begged even more. Don't say that. I'm your son, right? Help me, at least.
What? That's not fair, Frederick. Trying to save yourself? It's Dad's fault for being tricked in the first place. There's a good investment, we'll share the profits, how could you not suspect that? You were happy to become rich and handed over all your savings too.
I was tired of hearing their endless and unpleasant bickering. Our family was destroyed by a single scam artist. If my ex-husband hadn't cheated, maybe we would still be a happy family now. But it's too late.
It's a waste of time. Can you leave?
As I tried to close the front door, my ex-husband begged me.
Wait! Please, let's start over. Your parents are farmers, right? So even if we have no money, we won't starve.
Are you saying you want to reconcile with me for food?
No, it's not like that. I need you. I know it's too late, but forgive me. I won't do it again.
His obvious excuses only made me sigh. Such men will surely repeat the same mistakes. I decided to put an end to it. Wasting food brings punishment. I've seen many like you suffering. What are you talking about all of a sudden?
It's my parents' teaching. You threw away the vegetables they lovingly grew without even eating them. Understand? I'm angry. I will never forgive you. Don't ever show your face to me again.
With that, I closed the door.
Wait! Mom, forgive me!
They kept making a scene at the front door, causing a neighborhood disturbance, so I called the police to take them away. Later, I heard that my ex-husband lost all his money and was fired for embezzling company funds. My son dropped out of high school and is working, but he can't find a good job. The marriage scam artist was recently arrested, according to the news. He was a middle-aged man, nothing like the beautiful woman, and many men were deceived on social media. As for me, I'm helping out on my parents' farm, living a stress-free and healthy life. I'm soon going to be introduced to a man of my age who's also a farmer in the same area. Next time, I want to build a happy family.